Hi, I'm Daniel Foley, author of 7 Days with Jesus, Crossing Over into Abundant Life. In this video, I want to talk to you about understanding a different way to think about your time. So I want to talk about the difference between cyclical and linear view of time, so to speak. Now, it used to be that people all over the world had this view of time, that it was cyclical, because we have seasons, we have days and nights, everything goes in cycles. And so when you look in nature, you see that everything is cyclical and goes in cycles and is circular. But on the other hand, when the Jews came along, they were the first ones to come along with this idea that time was linear, that we're moving across time, that time had a beginning and an end. You know, God created the world and there was going to be an end to the world. And so they were the first ones to kind of propose the viewpoint that time was linear. And so the question becomes, well, which one is it? Is time linear or is time cyclical? And this may confuse you a little bit, but the answer is actually both. There's a paradox, so to speak, that we are moving forward in a linear fashion in time, but there's also cycles of time as well. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about. It's a different way of looking at and understanding time. But when we come out of this, my hope is that you have a better understanding of it so that you can learn to maximize your time and take advantage of the systems and cycles that God has put in place for you. So one of the verses we're going to be looking at, 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 23, David is inquiring of the Lord, asking whether or not he should attack the Philistines. And God tells him, you should, but don't go straight at them, circle around them, and then you'll attack them when you hear the angels wrestling in the trees, so to speak. So God tells them here, don't go straight up, but circle around. So sometimes God leads us in a circular path, but in many times the Bible tells us that all the ways of the Lord are straight paths, level highways. And so we see that sometimes God causes us to circle around and kind of wait in a holding pattern sometimes. And that's what I want to talk about here, is that, yes, time is linear. We are moving forward in time, but it's also cyclical. So we've got these seasons. So a lot of times we will be in kind of a cyclical or waiting pattern. So if you ever feel like you're just kind of in a rut where you're repeating the same things over and over and over again, sometimes you're going to be just in a holding pattern. So what I want to get at is that it looks kind of like this, is you're moving along and then all of a sudden you get into a cycle, okay? And you're in this cycle and then you do something to get out of that cycle and it moves you forward along the time to another level, so to speak. And then you get into usually another holding pattern. You get into another cycle, and then you come out of this. Now the key is God gave us these cycles as a gift, and we have to learn how to operate them and how to get out of them. Now what I'm going to tell you is, usually the key to you getting out of one of these cycles is doing something different. Okay, and a lot of times it has to do with the way that you interact with people. Okay, is number one. So maybe if you're in a bad cycle, you feel like you're waiting, and the things that God has told you are taking a long time, that's going to happen. I remember when I first started to get the vision for what God had called me to do, I was just thinking that it was just going to be a straight path like this, right? Okay. But what I learned is that you take some steps forward, and then it's kind of like you're in this waiting game for a while, and you're going around and around. And the reason for that usually is that you have to grow and to develop. So the first thing I would look at is, how do you treat people? Are you the same in all circumstances? Do you get frustrated and upset and snap at people, or maybe hold bitterness and resentment and unforgiveness to people when you have the ups and downs of life, so to speak? Because God promised the people in the book of Deuteronomy that the promised land that they were going to would not be like the land of Egypt. It would be a land of mountains and valleys. So there's going to be some ups and downs, and you have to learn to be consistent in all those times for you to break out of the cycle to move ahead to the next phases, so to speak. Okay? So we have to understand that God is trying to move us forward linearly, but sometimes we get stuck in a holding pattern, and that usually means that it requires us to grow. We have to do something different. We have to grow. We have to change. But you think about a farmer. He has to follow the cycles of the year to have a successful harvest. And we have to learn to do the same. We have to learn to sow our seeds at the right time. We have to learn to cultivate our crops at the right time, to harvest at the right time. And so God will show us how to operate these cycles if we'll pay attention to Him and listen to Him and focus on how our own growth, so to speak, and how we are interacting with other people and our relationship with Him as well. But I want you to understand this, is that we're moving along, and at the right time, see, think about this, in the course of time, God, the cycles, you got linear time going on, but you've got these cycles of the earth going on all the time beside this. God puts you on this earth at exactly the right point in time as the cycles are going on. Think of like double dutch jump rope. You got to time it to get in there at the right time. God puts you on the earth at exactly the right time for you to accomplish what you're supposed to accomplish. And you're going to have to understand this process that you're moving along linearly, but sometimes you're going to get stuck in a waiting game. Okay? And it's usually going to require your growth for you to come out on the other side. Okay? And that's the process that he takes us through, is that he transforms us. When this is happening, what's happening is he's doing a work in us, and he's transforming us to come out better on the other side.